Thank you for watching, and my name's Glenn Morgan. This is We the Govern, and the subject of today's video basically is a part 2 on a video that I did just a few weeks ago called The Fiasco in Pasco. And today we're going to be talking about what I'm calling the part 2 section. It's going to be the Cronemeyer Chronicles, and that'll make more sense as we jump right into it. Now, before we go too far into this, I just want to quickly remind you that if you haven't subscribed to our channel or hit like, feel free to do so. You can look right down below and do that right below this video. And of course, if you have the ability to share that information with others and encourage them to subscribe as well, that's just a good way of just getting the word out to more people about what's actually going on in Washington State and how you can be involved in exposing the truth out there. So let's get back to the Franklin County drama. And I know last time in the first video I was talking about these illegal pay raises based on the Attorney General opinion, an angry sheriff taking over the jail, and a bunch of stuff that's been going on related to that. Guns being removed from the jail, helpless about the HAPO Center, all kinds of stuff was going on. But as I dug into this more, and I kind of referenced this a little bit with that last video, there's really a lot more to see here. And today I'm just going to be basically digging directly into some of this other stuff. And I'm kind of zeroing in on this video a little bit with the Franklin County administrator, the county manager here, that was Mike Gonzalez. At least that was the name that he used when he was in Franklin County. Now, to be clear, he's actually the former county administrator right now, and his name is actually not Gonzalez, or at least it isn't originally Gonzalez. But that is going to be part of the story that we get into here. What really motivated me to look a little bit deeper into this was this Spokane County civil case where Gonzalez actually lost the case, at least the first part of it, and it's a $5 million civil case against him based on making secret and illegal recordings of the county auditor and some of the county managers, and clearly violating Washington State's privacy laws, and among other things. And so it's outlined a little bit here. I'll link to the story down below. You can read about it yourself, and you can see the original document out of the Spokane County Superior Court here. But I think that this really kind of opens this door into this weird story, and it was worth just digging a little bit deeper into it and starting to kind of peel back the layers of the onion and what's actually going on here. Now, again, I've told people this many, many times. It's more than just the political class, those politicians that are elected who run whatever respective form of government that you're looking at, whether that's the school board members or the county commissioners, because there's always managers behind the scene, bureaucrats who are not elected, but frankly, oftentimes they're even worse than any of the elected officials that you have there in the sense of bad things that they've done. And I've written stories about this for over 10 years now. This is an article back in 2016, and I wrote it about Cliff Moore, who had basically one of the worst county managers that Thurston County had, and this was right before he went to haunt the city of Yakima, which is kind of a theme because when you catch these bad guys who are running, essentially running local governments, they do tend to kind of move serially, quickly between jurisdictions. As the new jurisdiction that they've jumped into realize just how bad they are, they quickly get their resume in order and they jump to a new one. This is the kind of thing that happens. More recently, I've done more stories about Thurston County, where the latest county manager, the finance director, and the city attorney or the county attorney all bailed out real quick once they were exposed, or there's been exposure and ongoing investigation into the missing money that related to the Atrium Fund. Obviously, it's probably more than $4 million that's gone missing. Those guys were involved clearly, and the clownish elected officials that were supposedly in charge of the county at the same time, somehow they were involved as well. It's a total fiasco and a mess, and it is worth digging deeper into the bureaucracy so you better understand what's going on. So let's get back to Mike Gonzalez, or apparently what his real name is Cronemeyer. So he was born Cronemeyer. He actually played baseball, was quite an athlete actually, as far as I can tell, and up and through the college level. And there's actually articles you can look up online that simply talk about his background when he got into media after after playing baseball. And they even did a whole story about him changing his name to Mike Gonzalez, and nobody knew who that was. And apparently he made this name change at some point in time in 2007 so that it made it a little bit easier for him to get jobs because he could claim to be Hispanic then, and Cronemeyer didn't really check that DEI box along the way, at least according to these historic articles. Now, by itself, listen, there's nothing wrong with changing your name. People do it all the time. Sometimes they do it to cover up DUIs or other reasons. Sometimes it just makes it easier for them to get another job. And eventually he moved to Spokane, and then he ends up down in Pasco. And one of the things that Mike Gonzalez had done is he was ahead of this economic development manager for the city of Pasco. And one of the things, according to his own cover letter that he sent to Franklin County before they hired him as the manager, was that he was responsible for oversight of what was called the Downtown Pasco Development Association. So DPDA, that's what it was. You can see a Facebook post here where he's promoting them and trying to get new people on that board. Now, he was only in this position at Pasco for a handful of years before he jumped over to Franklin County. And again, this is one of the scenarios that I oftentimes look at with county or city or school superintendents. When these managers start bouncing around a lot, that's not usually a good sign. It's usually an indication that they're probably not the optimal people to put in charge of those jurisdictions. But nevertheless, this is where he was. And interestingly enough, when he was leaving the city of Pasco and applying to Franklin County, there was already an ongoing investigation by the state auditor's office into this Downtown Pasco Development Authority. And I'll link to the findings from that audit down below. But it's a fiasco of financial incompetence. Mike Cronemeyer or Gonzalez was there. They had this disastrous 2022 Cinco de Mayo event where they spent $250,000 on a $30,000 budget. And for those of you who have only taken Common Core math, $250,000 is actually a lot more than $30,000, and it really put them into financial distress and kind of started the final spiral. In addition, there was a substantial questionable use of $630,000 of private COVID cash money that had come in, OPMA violations, all kinds of other issues. Ultimately, this actually led to the city of Pasco at least indicating that they were going to hire a private investigator and forensic fraud investigator to figure out exactly what the heck happened there after they shut down this entity that the soon-to-be Franklin County manager was supposedly responsible for, at least in part, while he was working in the city of Pasco. Now, this comes on top of the fact that this very same organization, and this is before Mike got there apparently, but they had their former director there had been convicted of embezzling over $140,000 in 2016. This guy named Michael Goins. So he was the former executive director of the Downtown Pasco Development Authority, and he was caught stealing $140,000, embezzling it, and he served about 7 months in jail. He agreed to repay $260,000. I don't know if he ever actually did that, but nevertheless, that was kind of the backstory of that organization before they continued just down the disastrous financial path that they seemed to stay on after that. So it wasn't enough that they just had an executive director who was an embezzler. They just decided to become financially disastrous no matter who was in charge. But regardless, right in the middle of this audit, so keep in mind, this is being audited, this Downtown Pasco Development Association is being audited. Mike Gonzalez, or Mike Cronemeyer, depending on what real name he's using at that time, this guy decides he's going to jump nearby to Franklin County, which includes Pasco, and he's going to be the new county manager. And apparently there was a heated debate on this. I remember being in Pasco, or at least in Franklin County around that time, and hearing about this debate a little bit. I didn't know a lot about it, but I just remember that there was a sharp division on the county commission as to whether or not they should bring him in. And you can read some of the stories that were written about it at that time. And there was a divided Franklin commissioner vote, essentially, where one of the commissioners decided not to vote for him. Two of them did, but one of the things that they mentioned is they said, okay, if we're going to bring in this young guy with not a lot of experience, we'll basically use our interim county manager, which was Duane Davidson at the time, who was the former state auditor and the former, before that, Benton County Auditor. Sorry, former state treasurer and then the Benton County Auditor before that, with a good and basically strong reputation for being a steady Eddie, firm hand on the finances, and generally somebody he was quite experienced. And so they felt that they could hire this new guy to come in to Franklin County as long as Duane kind of helped, helped in this transition process maybe for 6 months, which is a pretty reasonable expectation when you're hiring somebody new to the county. That's what you would think. The only thing is that once Mr. Cronemeyer or Mike Gonzalez got in there, he decided to basically cut off Duane's access with his security card, basically shut down his email and prevented him from being involved, and essentially just chased him out of the county so that he couldn't have any oversight, which is never a good sign. And in case anybody doesn't know, once somebody's doing something like that, that's also a bad sign, which then, of course, immediately led to the scandal that kind of defined the future time that he spent there in Franklin County, which all began apparently with a $12,500 invoice from a previous vendor who had basically failed audits at the HAPO Center. I remember I talked about the HAPO Center last time, which is the kind of the mini convention center that they have in Franklin County. And apparently Mike Gonzalez Cronemeyer, he wanted to actually pay this, and Matt Beaton, the auditor, decided that that was not a good idea, that they had to go through a formal process to pay it, and that led to some kind of a conflict and dispute between them. And essentially that's where the Mike Gonzalez story as Franklin County's manager really just got worse and worse after that, because it essentially, when you go and you read this litigation here, then Mike Gonzalez decided that in his anger and frustration at being stymied from spending money outside of the rules that the auditor's office has in order to process these expenditures, he decided to start taping secretly meetings that he had with Matt Beaton, who is the county auditor, and with Rocky Mullen, who's the county commissioner, and others. We aren't really sure totally, of course, exactly how many secret personal recordings that he was making, and then potentially manipulating those stories. We don't really know for sure what he was doing with it, but it led to a lot of drama, and these are really the only two people you can see. Franklin County Auditor there in the middle, Matt Beaton, and Franklin County Commissioner Rocky Mullen there. They were at least two of them that he had recorded illegally by his own admission. Listen, it's not me making this up. You can read the documents. It's very clear. He admitted that he did this illegally under Washington state law. But part of the reason why he was doing this is right at the same time that he was making these illegal recordings, he apparently was feeding all this information over to the Tri-City Herald, which did a series of over a dozen just hit pieces on the commissioner, on Matt Beaton, on Clint Didier, who's another county commissioner there. Continually, it looks like he was manipulating the information, and the Tri-City Herald printed every bad idea or dumb theory that he had, and I don't know if they were using some of these recordings for evidence or what they were doing, but it gave him enough ability to also trigger what turned out to be a false criminal complaint that was filed against Matt Beaton then at the same time, so the county auditor. And again, remember, got to go back, this all stemmed from a stupid $12,500 bad invoice that was sent in from a vendor who had been miserably failing at the HAPO Center and trying to get basically a double payment. And Matt Beaton, appropriately, it looks to me, from what I can tell, stepped in and said, hey, you can't just squander money randomly like that. It's not a good idea. It's not the Downtown Pasco Development Association. It's Franklin County, and we are trying to toe the line here. So nevertheless, that's what was happening, and there's a bit of drama there because you can see in this article here, the lawsuit here, this came out after, or at least the lawsuit was initiated after that Snohomish County Sheriff's Office was brought in to do an investigation based on a fake criminal complaint that it was a real complaint, but a fake issue, where they came in and said there was nothing to see here, and then ultimately that's how it became uncovered that these illegal secret recordings are out there, and that's what led to the civil case that Mike Gonzalez Cronemeyer is apparently losing in Spokane Superior Court right now. Now, keep in mind, there's another little weird part of this, which is that Franklin County is actually paying the former county manager here, Mike Gonzalez. They're actually paying his legal fees while he's in this middle of a civil case that looks like it's entirely something that's his fault. So it's not clear, and unfortunately, that was also because of a dumb, bad decision that was made by a previous Franklin County Commission at some point in time in the past, where they changed their ordinances to allow the prosecutor's office to randomly and decide to defend former employees of Franklin County in the future, even if the underlying problem was something that they didn't do officially as part of their official capacity. So I'm just curious to see where this case goes. Obviously, there's still parts of this, the discovery and the interrogatories and some of the evidence that come out in this civil case should be pretty interesting to look at down the road, but something is particularly ugly and weird about this case. And it's just worth knowing when this kind of stuff happens. And again, as I mentioned earlier, now Mike Gonzalez, Cronemeyer, he no longer works for Franklin County. He's already jumped ship and moved over to the city of Sunnyside after forcing Franklin County to pay him a large sum of money on the way out the door, which seems particularly questionable at this point in time, considering the exposure of what's actually going on in the civil case and some of these other investigations now into his past supervision of this downtown Pasco Association, and now he's jumped right into Sunnyside, and there's all kinds of strange things happening in Sunnyside, all kinds of drama. He recently shut down City Hall so that he could supposedly use that day where he shuts down City Hall like some kind of a fit to process public records requests because he was refusing, apparently, to provide to the elected officials any receipts or evidence of some of the expenditures that he was directly responsible for at the city. That is never a good sign, especially when you have somebody here who has basically jumped from drama disaster to drama disaster and leaves nothing but a drama and a financial disaster in his wake. Something is wrong when this happens, and it's not a good sign. So again, I just want to point out, when you're looking at local government, it's more than just the elected officials. It's worth paying attention to the people who are basically hired by those elected officials to supposedly run the day-to-day operations. It doesn't matter whether it's a county, city, school board, conservation district, whatever it is. Oftentimes those managers are a bigger problem than the elected officials. Now, the elected officials are ultimately responsible, but if nobody's paying attention to what these managers and these bureaucrats are doing, then they're going to oftentimes create even more chaos, financial disasters, and messes behind them, particularly if they're jumping from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Now, this is my part 2 of Fiasco and Pasco. It seems almost inevitable there's going to be a part 3, but I wanted to give you that quick update on what's going on in my investigation into Franklin County, and knowing that there's probably a lot more information that needs to come out in this case. But if you want to learn how to do more of that, go to one of our Doge Washington training classes. They're going to be all over Washington State. You can go to that class schedule, look to it down below, learn how to use public records, learn how to pay attention to the bureaucrats and the elected officials, find out what's going on where you live, and just be involved enough that you can start to make a difference by exposing the truth in local government. It's your money, it's your future, it's your community, and you have a right to do that, and I think it's really a duty to do that. But the only way to do that is if you're willing to actually show up and get involved, because, as I've always said, the future belongs to those who show up.